Have you ever felt like your cat was watching you? Not with ordinary curiosity, but with an unsettling intensity, as if it knew something you didn't. Or maybe you've sensed your cat reacting to things you couldn't see. Something invisible, mysterious, perhaps even otherworldly. Carl Jung, one of the most enigmatic thinkers of the 20th century, once spoke of a hidden dimension to cats, something few have understood even today. What Jung revealed about these animals could not only shift the way you perceive your feline companion, but also reshape how you view the unseen forces that mold your inner world. Because according to Jung, the cat isn't just a pet. It's a profound symbol, one that connects to the deepest layers of the psyche and the vast, often misunderstood realm of the collective unconscious. And yes, what you're about to discover might just leave you deeply unsettled. Stay with me until the very end, because I'll reveal 3 hidden symbols Jung believed proved that a cat is far more than a domestic creature. In fact, he believed it could be a living embodiment of something spiritual, something psychological, a mirror of your inner self. The story begins with one of Jung's young patients who came to him carrying a troubling confession. For weeks, he'd been dreaming every single night of a black cat sitting silently in the corner of his room. It never moved, it never attacked. It simply stared at him, as if it held knowledge he couldn't access, as if it waited for something. Most would dismiss this as just a strange dream, a trick of the unconscious mind. But Jung didn't. He paused, fell silent, and finally responded with a line the young man would never forget. Animals in dreams, especially cats, are living symbols. They are what we repress. To Jung, the unconscious was never meaningless. Every image that emerged had significance. Every creature carried a message. And when the cat appeared, it wasn't by accident. It was the unconscious speaking, signaling something hidden beneath layers of reason, pain, or forgotten emotion. In Jungian psychology, this hidden force is known as the shadow, the darker part of the self that we deny, avoid, or disown. And according to Jung, the cat, whether in dreams or in waking life, is often a messenger of this shadow. And here's where things grow even more curious. After that session, the young man stopped dreaming about the black cat. But in waking life, he began noticing real cats everywhere. On rooftops, in alleyways, outside his home, watching him. Jung told him this was no coincidence. When the unconscious isn't acknowledged internally, it begins to manifest externally. And few creatures symbolize the unseen as powerfully as the cat. Mysterious, stealthy, independent, and always just beyond reach. From that case on, Jung deepened his study of cats, not as animals, but as archetypes. He began to see them as silent emissaries of the unconscious, not random companions, but figures that force us to confront what we've tried to forget. If a cat has ever stared at you for no clear reason, what if, in that moment, it wasn't just looking at you, but reflecting you back to yourself? Through the feline gaze, Jung believed, we glimpse the shadow, one of the oldest, most silent mirrors of all. For him, cats were not mere pets or decorations. They were ancient, living manifestations of archetypal power. In cultures throughout time, cats have always held symbolic weight. In ancient Egypt, they were sacred guardians. In the Middle Ages, feared and linked to witches. In Eastern traditions, protectors of the soul and home. Jung believed these cultural patterns weren't random. They echoed deeper psychological truths. The cat, he said, represents the untamable, the mystery that lurks in shadow, the part of existence we can't fully control. When an archetype like the cat appears, whether in a dream, a moment of synchronicity, or even a strange animal encounter, it demands attention. Because in that moment, something in you is waking up, something long ignored. It could be your intuition, your hidden sensitivity, your forgotten connection to the sacred and unseen. Jung once wrote, "Where there is a cat, there is a threshold between worlds, between what's visible and what lies in darkness." He warned, the cat does not enter your life by accident. It comes as a messenger of the unsaid, a guardian of what remains unresolved, its indifference, its stillness, its sharp vision in the dark. All these reflect the soul's complexity. That's why, Jung observed, people in the midst of emotional crisis or inner transformation often begin noticing cats more often. To him, this was a signal. The unconscious had begun to speak, not through language, but through symbol. And few symbols, Jung believed, are as ancient or as revealing as the gaze of a cat. That quiet, knowing look, as if it remembers something your conscious mind has forgotten. Carl Jung wasn't your typical scientist. While others focused only on what could be measured, Jung journeyed into the unseen, into dreams, symbols, and the language of the soul. For him, the mysteries of the inner world were as vast as the stars, and within those mysteries were animals, symbols in motion. The cat, in particular, was one of the most haunting of all. Through decades of therapy, observation, and deep symbolic work, Jung identified 3 key revelations about cats. These weren't mere opinions. They were psychological truths, ones that could shift how we relate not just to cats, but to ourselves. His first revelation: the cat embodies the active shadow, the part of us we suppress, fear, shame, hidden desires, unresolved wounds. Jung observed that cats often emerge not just in dreams, but in real life during emotional turmoil. Their behavior, their presence, their sudden appearance in specific rooms or moments. These are not always random. Jung believed the cat was a living mirror, a creature drawn to shadow, just as we are drawn to light. Many of his patients told stories of cats appearing when they felt deeply anxious, sad, or lost. Drawn, it seemed, by something unseen. Jung didn't dismiss this as superstition. He saw it as the shadow calling for integration. And the cat, as a fearless observer of darkness, was its guide. Jung's fascination with animals wasn't merely academic. It was spiritual, symbolic, and deeply psychological. And among all creatures, it was the cat that captured his imagination in a most peculiar and powerful way. He believed that cats were not just pets or decorative companions wandering silently through our homes. They were living conduits of intuition, embodied echoes of something older than language, wiser than thought. While humans stumble through life entangled in responsibilities, ruled by the ego and fragmented identities, cats remain anchored to something more primal, more essential, something untouched. Jung often spoke of animals as beings of purer consciousness. Unlike humans, who are fragmented by masks and roles, cats do not pretend to be anything other than what they are. They are not chasing self-definition or social acceptance. They exist, not in our abstract layers of neurosis, but in a wholeness we often lose. And within that wholeness lies a particular sensitivity, almost otherworldly in its depth. Cats seem to move through this world with a quiet knowledge, a sacred detachment. Their stillness is not emptiness. It is awareness, presence, an unshaken connection to the invisible. When a cat slinks into a quiet room and suddenly fixates on an empty corner, we may chuckle and assume it's just a moment of feline whimsy. But Jung saw something different. He suggested that in those moments, the cat isn't staring into nothingness. It is perceiving a layer of reality that we, in our linear thinking and logical blindness, have long forgotten how to see. He believed that cats were attuned to energies and presences that lie beyond the reach of our rational mind. They sensed symbols before they formed into thoughts. They listened to vibrations, not voices. For Jung, the cat was not only a creature, it was a spiritual antenna. They picked up on the subtle shifts in atmosphere, the unspoken tensions, the quiet hauntings of the human psyche. Whether it was an ancestral grief lingering in a home or an unresolved emotion echoing from a person's heart, the cat could feel it. And when it responded, when it hissed or froze or stared, it was reacting not from thought, but from something far deeper, an instinctive wisdom rooted in the collective unconscious. That's why Jung urged us to watch them closely, not to project our human drama onto them, but to learn from their presence. When your cat behaves strangely, pausing, circling, or avoiding a space, it may not be random. It may be sensing something your conscious mind has yet to grasp. This brings us to a revelation Jung found both mysterious and spiritually profound. Something he could not fully explain through science, but felt deeply through symbolism. The sound of a cat's purr. To the casual ear, it's a soft, rhythmic vibration, a lullaby of comfort, perhaps. But to Jung, it was something far more significant. He believed the cat's purr was not merely a sound of contentment, but a healing frequency. an ancient, unspoken medicine of the soul. The purr, he thought, was a symbolic resonance, a vibration that could bypass the walls of the ego and speak directly to the wounded psyche. It wasn't just soothing to the nervous system, it reached deeper into the emotional body, even the spiritual core. To Jung, it was not unlike the sacred chants of monks or the rhythmic drumming of shamans. Vibrations designed not merely for auditory pleasure, but for healing, alignment, and transformation. The purr, in this context, was a natural mantra, one that had survived since before language, echoing through time with the same quiet power. It could calm the storm of thoughts, it could soothe the anxious heart, and more profoundly, it could reintegrate parts of the soul that had been lost through trauma, neglect, or spiritual amnesia. Just as ancient music could induce trance states or silence the inner critic, the gentle vibration of a purring cat held the power to bring a person into stillness. And in that stillness, healing could begin, not just physical, but psychological, energetic, archetypal. Jung believed that the rhythm of the purr aligned with certain natural frequencies of the human psyche. It mirrored a kind of homeostasis, an internal harmony that many of us have forgotten, buried under layers of noise, stress, and separation from nature. In this sense, the cat wasn't just comforting, it was restoring something sacred. Science is now catching up with what Jung intuited long ago. Research has shown that a cat's purr typically resonates between 25 and 150 hertz, a range shown to promote healing in bones and tissues, reduce inflammation, and lower stress. But Jung didn't need a study to validate this. He had already sensed the deeper truth, that certain sounds, especially those wrapped in symbolic meaning, could act as bridges between the conscious and unconscious realms. Whether it was the chanting of Tibetan monks, the low hum of nature, or the soft purr of a contented cat, these sounds carried more than vibrations. They carried meaning. To him, the purr was not simply a vibration emitted from the body, it was a frequency born of the soul, a sacred resonance that bypassed logic, bypassed fear, and reached into the hidden places of the psyche. Cats, then, were not just animals. They were spiritual guides, guardians of the liminal, observers of our unseen emotional weather. They walked the boundary between two worlds, the visible and the invisible, the rational and the mystical. Their presence, Jung believed, was never trivial. It was symbolic, purposeful, and often healing. He extended this understanding to the broader concept of sound. Jung believed that soft, repetitive tones could restore a kind of inner equilibrium. Whether through drumming, chanting, whispering, or purring, certain sounds operated as tools of recalibration, reminders of the soul's original rhythm. To him, these were not just sensory experiences, they were energetic ones. Sound, in Jung's eyes, was a messenger of transformation. It traveled not just through air, but through the unconscious, through the mythic body, and the cat's purr was perhaps the most humble yet potent example of this hidden symphony. So when a cat curls beside you, not just during peace, but especially during pain, when it hums its delicate melody into the space between you and your sorrow, do not dismiss it. That purr is not casual, it is sacred. It may be reaching into you, into the part that cannot speak, into the wounds that words cannot reach, and offering something no doctor, no therapist, no philosopher ever could. A vibrational balm, a spiritual hug from the silence. Modern studies may confirm the regenerative properties of this sound, but Jung already knew. Long before the data, he knew. He felt the essence before the facts. To him, the cat's purr was a silent prayer, a whispered ceremony of wholeness. It bypassed the intellect and reached something deeper, the wounded child, the grieving lover, the fragmented soul. He often said that what mattered most was not what could be proven, but what could be lived. Knowledge without experience was sterile. Symbolism without integration was meaningless. And so, the purr became a symbol of living healing. Not a theory, but a moment, a presence, a gift. In the presence of a cat, we are offered more than affection. We are offered reflection. A mirror, a healing frequency disguised as a soft-bodied creature with golden eyes. Jung saw three archetypal roles embodied in the cat. First, as shadow, reflecting our unconscious fears, desires, and instincts. Second, as intuitive channel, sensitive to subtle energies and symbols. And third, as healer, radiating a frequency of emotional restoration that transcends words. So when a cat enters your life, it is not a coincidence. It is a visitation, a symbol, an initiation into the deeper parts of yourself. That small, quiet animal may be the keeper of a lesson, a guide for a chapter you're about to live, or the reminder of something sacred that you've forgotten. Perhaps this is why, when a cat stares at you from the shadows, not blinking, not moving, it feels like it's seeing something beyond your face. It isn't merely watching you. It is reading you, sensing something buried deep beneath your words and expressions. It is gazing into your essence. To Jung, knowledge was dead without transformation. Symbols were not museum pieces, they were tools for becoming. And cats, like all sacred symbols, were not exceptions to that rule. They were invitations to see more clearly, to feel more deeply, and to live more wholly. Everything had meaning. Every gesture could be a metaphor. Every creature could be a messenger. And every encounter, especially with animals, was an opportunity for self-revelation. If cats truly embody our shadow, channel deep intuition, and emit healing vibrations, then their role in our lives is not ornamental. It is initiatory. Jung did not offer rigid formulas, but gentle suggestions, ways to engage the world with greater symbolic sensitivity. He encouraged us to treat the presence of animals as mirrors of our own psyche, to pay attention, to listen with the heart, to notice the patterns. For in those patterns, we might discover not just the nature of the cat, but the shape of our own soul. One of his most practical recommendations was simple. Observe your cat as a projection of your inner world. In analytical psychology, the external often mirrors the internal. Just as dreams express what we cannot say aloud, so too might the behaviors of our pets reflect something silently stirring within. If your cat avoids a certain room, grows restless in your presence, or suddenly becomes unusually affectionate, it may not be reacting to something physical. It may be responding to energies, memories, or unconscious material you haven't yet acknowledged. Rather than dismissing this, Jung urged us to take note, not to fall into superstition or paranoia, but to awaken to the symbolic, to become curious. For the cat, in those moments, becomes a barometer of the invisible, a silent seismograph recording tremors in your psychic landscape. It mirrors not what is seen, but what is felt, beneath, behind, within. A second recommendation was to keep a symbolic behavior journal. Just as Jung encouraged the recording of dreams, he believed that unusual interactions with animals, especially in emotionally significant moments, could hold immense psychological value. If, during a time of heartbreak, fear, or personal transformation, your cat begins to act differently, do not ignore it. Write it down. What happened? What were you feeling? What occurred before and after? These moments, when recorded over time, begin to reveal a deeper pattern, a sacred correlation between the inner world and the outer world, between the soul and its living symbols. What happened? What were you feeling? What was the atmosphere in the room, not just in temperature or light, but in energy, in silence, in mood? Did the cat move toward you or away from you? Did it fix its eyes on something invisible to yours? Did it rest by your heart or vanish into another room? These are not idle observations. These are fragments of a larger language, the symbolic language of the soul, the living dream unfolding through waking life. Jung believed that everything meaningful leaves a trace, not always in words, but in gestures, in synchronicities, in the quiet choreography of life itself. When a cat shifts its pattern, when it starts avoiding a once-favored chair, or suddenly curls at your feet every night as you cry, don't just observe it as behavior. Receive it as communication. Ask yourself, what is this animal reflecting back to me? Not as a mirror of logic, but of spirit. Because in the world Jung inhabited, a world alive with archetypes, symbols, and hidden truths, nothing was meaningless. Everything was alive with message, even the softest purr in the silence, even the glance of a cat through a doorway, even the way it leaves just before you fall apart. These are not accidents, they are invitations to remember, feel, to see beyond. This is the intricate dialogue between soul and experience, a language written not with words, but with presence, with movement, with intuition. And within this sacred exchange, Jung offered one final, essential suggestion: to treat the cat not as a pet, but as a symbol, an emissary from the unconscious, a silent companion guiding you through the winding corridors of individuation. For Carl Jung, individuation was not a goal to be achieved, but a path, a lifelong pilgrimage into the heart of the self. It was the integration of opposites, the sacred union between light and shadow, the conscious and the unconscious, the known and the hidden. It was the becoming of the whole. 2030. And so if the cat appears in your life, curling around your ankles, resting beside you in moments of silence, disappearing when you grasp too tightly, it may be more than coincidence. It may be your shadow approaching in gentle form, your intuitive nature reaching out to be held. To honor this creature, then, is to honor the lost pieces of yourself, to stroke its fur with reverence, to listen when it moves toward you, to accept when it retreats into solitude, to give it space when it needs to vanish, and to offer gratitude for its silent presence during your private storms. These gestures, though simple, become sacred when done with awareness. They are rituals, not of religion, but of remembrance. Acts of quiet devotion that say, I see you, I feel you, I honor the mystery you carry. Jung believed that to truly engage with the symbolic is to invite transformation. Symbols are not dead things, they are alive. And when we treat them as living messengers, we activate something within us, something ancient, something healing. To dismiss the symbolic is to shut the door on the soul. To say, it's just a cat, is to miss the whisper of the divine hidden in the ordinary. But when you open yourself to that whisper, when you meet it with humility, with openness, with awe, you allow the symbol to speak, and in speaking, it begins to heal. That's why Jung urged us to see the cat not as a decoration of domestic life, but as an archetype walking beside us, a vessel of silent wisdom, a mirror cloaked in mystery, a guardian of thresholds who knows when to come close and when to walk away. And once you begin to see it this way, once the veil lifts, you will never look at your cat the same again. Because in Jung's world, nothing external was truly external. Everything around you, the people, the patterns, the dreams, the animals, is a reflection of the psyche, echoing back a truth that you may have forgotten or never dared to see. Even a cat sitting in the shadows might be a piece of your soul, waiting to be seen. Jung called this synchronicity, the sacred dance between inner and outer worlds, the moment when something outside of you aligns perfectly with something within. These are not coincidences, they are alignments, invitations. When a cat appears during a moment of grief, when it enters your life without explanation, when it stares at you as though it knows, pause. Something meaningful is reaching you. The arrival of a cat may not simply be the adoption of a pet. It may be the awakening of a symbol, a silent message from the unconscious mind, a gesture from the universe saying, pay attention. Something inside you is ready to emerge. Maybe it's your hidden tenderness. Maybe it's the grief you buried. Maybe it's your feminine intuition, the anima Jung spoke of, softly returning through the curl of a tail. Everything you see is a projection of your inner world. That is what Jung taught. The outer becomes a stage where the inner plays out its mysteries. So when the cat comes in moments of sorrow, stays through long nights of silence, and looks at you as if it knows what you're too afraid to say, don't turn away. That is the soul speaking. Don't mistake it for just another animal. It may be a vessel, a metaphor in motion, a sacred presence sent to accompany you through the dark. Just as dreams carry meaning through symbols, the cat becomes a living dream, awake, alert, and full of messages. Its stare, its silence, its unpredictability, all of it says, come closer to yourself. It may be showing you the very things you've tried to forget. Your fears, your grief, your quiet need for connection, your longing for peace in a world that feels too loud. The cat doesn't explain, it just is. And in that being, it teaches you to slow down, to feel more deeply, to trust what cannot be said. Because when you really stop and see your cat, not with eyes of expectation, But with the presence of reverence, something within you begins to shift. You start to sense that its stillness holds wisdom, that its movements hold meaning, that its very presence is not just comforting, but alchemical. You begin to see that it might not just be a companion, it might be a healer. Because some wounds can't be spoken, some griefs can't be named, some transformations begin not with words, but with a gaze, a quiet look from a being who simply knows. Jung once said, "The soul does not speak in words, it speaks in images, in feelings, in symbols." And perhaps in moments of great stillness, it also speaks in the soft steps of a cat. So if a cat has entered your life, know that it may be no accident. It may be the soul in feline form, whispering where the world shouts, protecting you in ways you cannot yet understand, revealing to you the parts of yourself you abandoned long ago, and all you have to do is listen. Listen to the silence. Listen to your own stillness. Because the soul rarely arrives in noise. It moves gently beneath the surface, and sometimes it wears fur and walks on silent paws. If you already have a cat, ask yourself, what part of me is this being reflecting? What energy is it sensing? What is it trying to show me about myself, about my past, about my healing? Because this is not just a companion. It may be a guide, a gatekeeper, a guardian of forgotten parts of your soul. And if you do not have a cat, but something in this message has awakened something deep inside, then perhaps it's only a matter of time.